Be me Alex, 28 years old data analyst, work for a mid-sized tech company that sells project management software. It's one of those places with beanbag chairs, free kombucha on tap, and a whole lot of corporate jargon about synergy and disruption. Overall, it's a decent job. The pay is good, my immediate team is solid, and I'm good at what I do. I like finding stories in the numbers. But there's this weird tension in the air, and it's been getting thicker for the past year. The company went on a huge culture reform kick. Our head of human resources is a woman named Brenda. Brenda is intense. She's in her late 40s, always dressed in sharp, angular blazers, and speaks in a tone that suggests she's perpetually disappointed in you. She lives and breathes the most extreme corporate feminist ideology. Every all-hands meeting becomes a lecture on patriarchal structures in the workplace. Every email she sends is loaded with links to articles about microaggressions and emotional labor. At first, it was just eye-roll-worthy stuff. Mandatory privilege walks, workshops on deconstructing masculinity, that kind of thing. Most of us guys just kept our heads down. We just wanted to do our jobs, collect our paychecks, and go home. But then it started getting personal. The atmosphere shifted. It felt like any interaction between a male and female employee was a potential incident report. A disagreement over code became hostile communication. A joke that didn't land became creating an unsafe environment. And Brenda's HR department was the Grand Inquisitor. There were no investigations, just verdicts. If a female employee made a complaint, the male employee was automatically guilty. No questions asked. We started to see good men, guys we'd worked with for years, get put on performance improvement plans or forced into humiliating public apologies for things that were, at best, misunderstandings. We were all walking on eggshells. The natural, easygoing banter that makes an office bearable just died. Conversations became stilted, formal, and brief. The male employees started eating lunch together, not out of camaraderie, but more like a support group. We'd sit in the break room, speaking in low voices, sharing stories of near misses and false alarms. The paranoia was real. The catalyst, the thing that pushed us over the edge, happened to my friend Mark. Mark is one of the most decent, mild-mannered guys I know. A senior software engineer married with a kid on the way. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He was in a project meeting with a junior designer named Jessica. There was a disagreement about a user interface element. Mark thought her design, while aesthetically pleasing, was impractical from a coding perspective and would slow down the application. He explained his reasoning calmly, professionally, citing data and performance metrics, standard workplace stuff. Jessica, however, was very attached to her design. She got defensive. The conversation got a little tense, but according to Mark and another guy in the room, nobody raised their voice or got unprofessional. The meeting ended. Mark thought that was that. The next day, he was called into Brenda's office. Jessica had filed a formal complaint. She claimed Mark had been aggressive, had dismissively shot down her ideas, and had created a toxic and misogynistic atmosphere in the meeting. She said she felt silenced and intimidated. Brenda didn't even ask Mark for his side of the story. She told him that his behavior was part of a disturbing pattern of male aggression in the company. Mark was floored. He tried to defend himself, explaining the technical nature of the disagreement. Brenda cut him off. "We are not talking about technical details," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We are talking about feelings." Jessica felt unsafe. That is the only metric that matters here. The verdict was swift. Mark was issued a formal written warning. He was required to attend a 6-week sensitivity training course on his own time. And the promotion he was in line for was officially put on indefinite hold. He came out of that meeting looking like he'd seen a ghost. That night, about 6 of us male employees went to a bar after work. Mark, me, a couple of guys from sales named David and Sam, and a few others. The mood was grim. Mark just stared into his beer, recounting the meeting with Brenda in a monotone voice. He was utterly defeated. "She didn't even let me speak," he said. "It was already decided. I was the bad guy. A 24-year-old designer who has been here for 6 months can derail my entire career with one word." We all knew he was right. It could have been any one of us. We felt powerless, defenseless. The system was rigged and we were the designated villains. David, who was a bit older and had been through a nasty divorce, was the one who said it first. "We need insurance," he said, swirling the ice in his glass. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Evidence," he said, looking around the table. "Look, my ex tried to pull all sorts of stuff during our divorce. Accused me of everything under the sun. You know what saved me? Documentation. I had records of everything." A light bulb went on in his head. We could all see it. "We need to start recording our interactions," he said. "Every single one, every meeting, every casual conversation in the hallway, every project discussion." There was a moment of silence as we all processed that. It sounded extreme, a little paranoid even. "Isn't that illegal?" Sam asked. "Not here," David said immediately. He'd clearly already thought about this. "Our state is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded and that person is you, it's perfectly legal." He pulled out his phone. "There are a dozen apps for it. You just hit a button on your phone in your pocket or get a tiny digital recorder. It's not for offense, it's for defense. It's our only defense." We talked about it for another hour. The moral implications, the risks. What if we got caught? But the more we talked, the more it made sense. What Brenda and the company had created was a system of guilty until proven innocent. Without evidence, it was our word against theirs, and we already knew whose word the company valued more. By the end of the night, we had a pact, a secret alliance. We would all start recording our verbal interactions with our female colleagues. It felt surreal, like something out of a spy movie, but it also felt necessary. It felt like the only way to reclaim a little bit of safety in a workplace that had become a minefield. The next day, I downloaded a voice recording app. It had a widget I could activate from my phone's lock screen. Discreet, easy, walking into work felt different. I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach, but also a sliver of control. My first interaction was with a female project manager named Chloe. She came by my desk to ask about some data points for her weekly report. My hand was shaking slightly as I subtly tapped my phone in my pocket. The little recording icon appeared on the screen. Our conversation was completely normal. It was professional, pleasant, and lasted about 3 minutes. When she walked away, I stopped the recording. Listening back to it later, it was mundane. But it was also perfect. It was a record of reality, a small, indisputable piece of truth. The other guys started doing it too. We had a private chat group where we'd check in. Had a meeting with 2 female colleagues. Recording was clean. Quick chat by the coffee machine, recorded. We were like a secret society bound by a shared sense of vulnerability. It changed our behavior too. We became even more cautious, more deliberate in our speech. We were hyper-aware that everything we said was on the record. It was exhausting, but it also made us impeccably professional. No off-color jokes, no casual complaints, no ambiguity. For a few months, nothing happened. The recordings piled up on our phones and cloud drives. Thousands of hours of boring, normal, professional conversations. It was the most boring insurance policy in the world. And then we had our first test. It happened to Sam from the sales team. Sam was in a team meeting presenting his quarterly sales figures. There were about 10 people in the room, a mix of men and women. During the questions and answers portion, a new female hire named Sarah asked a question about his methodology. Sam answered it. Sarah, who was known for being a bit of a contrarian, challenged his answer, suggesting he'd overlooked a key demographic. Sam politely disagreed, backing up his point with more data. It was a standard, slightly awkward, but ultimately professional exchange. 2 days later, Sam gets the dreaded calendar invite, meeting with Brenda. He told us in our chat group, and we all felt that familiar cold dread. Sam went to the meeting. Brenda was there along with Sarah. Brenda started by saying that a complaint had been made regarding Sam's dismissive and condescending tone during the team meeting. Sarah claimed that Sam had publicly humiliated her by shutting down her question and had made her feel small and stupid. She said his tone was patronizing. Brenda turned to Sam, her expression grim. "Sam, we have a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior. Creating a hostile environment, especially for new female employees, is a serious offense. Sam, to his credit, stayed calm. He had his phone in his pocket, already recording this meeting with Brenda, but he also had the recording of the original team meeting. He calmly stated his version of events. He said he was respectful and simply disagreed with her point based on the data. Brenda waved her hand dismissively. "That's not how Sarah experienced it. Her feelings are valid." Sam took a deep breath. "Brenda," he said, his voice steady, "I understand that, but what I'm saying is not just my opinion. The entire meeting was attended by 10 people, and I also have a complete, unedited audio recording of the entire meeting from start to finish." He said the look on Brenda's face was priceless. It was a mixture of shock and fury. Sarah just looked confused. "You what?" Brenda sputtered. "I recorded it," Sam said calmly, "for my own records. I can play it for you right now if you'd like. It will clearly show that my tone was professional and that the conversation was a simple, data-based disagreement." Brenda was cornered. In front of Sarah, she couldn't just refuse to hear exculpatory evidence. Reluctantly, she agreed. Sam played the recording. It was exactly as he described. His voice was even, his points were based on facts, and there was nothing remotely condescending or humiliating about it. If anything, Sarah sounded a bit aggressive. After the relevant section played, Sam stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah had the decency to look embarrassed. She mumbled something about maybe she misinterpreted his tone. Brenda, however, was livid. But her anger wasn't directed at Sarah for the false accusation. It was directed at Sam. "You have no right to record meetings without permission," she hissed. "Actually, Brenda, I do," Sam replied, quoting the one-party consent law. "It was for my own protection, for situations exactly like this." Brenda had no choice but to dismiss the complaint. She couldn't punish him. The evidence was irrefutable. Sam walked out of that office vindicated. He told us what happened in the chat, and it was like a massive weight had been lifted. Our insurance policy had worked. For the first time in a long time, we felt a sense of hope, but we also knew that we had just made a powerful enemy. Brenda knew one of us was recording. She didn't know how many, and she was going to be looking for revenge. The big one, the main event, landed on me. I was assigned to a high-priority project with a colleague named Emily. Emily was a marketing manager, a few years younger than me. She was incredibly ambitious, politically savvy, and was one of Brenda's clear favorites in the office. She was a regular speaker at the Women in Tech luncheons and was very vocal about gender politics in the workplace. Frankly, I always found her a bit intimidating. The project involved analyzing user engagement data to inform a new marketing campaign. My role was to provide the raw data and analysis. Her role was to build the campaign strategy around it. From the start, we clashed, not personally but professionally. Emily had a vision for the campaign that was, from my perspective, not supported by the data. She wanted to target a specific user demographic that my analysis showed was not our core audience. I tried to explain it to her in multiple emails and team meetings, presenting charts and graphs to back up my points. "The numbers just don't support this direction, Emily," I'd say. "We'd be wasting a significant portion of the budget." She would get defensive, arguing that my data was too focused on the past and that her instincts told her this was a growth market. It culminated in a one-on-one meeting in a small conference room. We needed to finalize the strategy before presenting it to the vice president. As soon as we sat down, I put my phone on the table and started a recording app, ostensibly to take notes. I'd learned from Sam's experience that being upfront was better. "Just recording this so I don't miss any action items," I said casually. Emily just shrugged. The conversation was tense. I walked her through my findings again as patiently as I could. "Alex, I feel like you're not listening to me," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "This is about vision, not just spreadsheets." "I understand," I said calmly. "But a vision built on faulty data is just a hallucination. My job is to ground our strategy in reality. The data clearly shows that our most profitable and engaged users are in this demographic, not the one you're suggesting." We went back and forth for about 45 minutes. I never raised my voice, I never insulted her, I stuck to the facts. I kept my arguments focused on the data and the project goals. Eventually she conceded, but she was not happy about it. She agreed to go with the data-driven approach, but her body language screamed resentment. She packed up her laptop with sharp, angry movements. "Fine," she snapped, "we'll do it your way." The meeting ended, and I felt a sense of relief mixed with unease. I had won the argument, but I had a feeling this wasn't over. I saved the audio file, naming it Project Phoenix Strategy Meeting. A week passed. We gave the presentation to the vice president. It went extremely well. He praised the strategy and my thorough data analysis. Emily was professionally complimentary, but I could feel the coldness radiating from her. Then the email arrived. Subject, urgent meeting from Brenda, attendees. Me, Brenda, and the vice president of my division, a man named Mr. Henderson. My heart sank into my stomach. This is it. I walked into Brenda's office, my own phone in my pocket, recording. Mr. Henderson was already sitting there, looking stern. Brenda was sitting behind her desk, and her expression was one of triumphant fury. She looked like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Alex, thank you for coming," she began, her voice dripping with false formality. "Please sit down," I sat. "We are here because of a very serious complaint that has been filed against you by Emily," she said, savoring every word. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. What could she possibly have complained about? "Emily has reported that during your one-on-one meeting last week you became aggressive and hostile," Brenda continued, looking at her notes. "She claims that you raised your voice, that you belittled her marketing expertise, and that you stood up and leaned over the table in a physically intimidating manner." My jaw almost hit the floor. This was a complete fabrication. A paranoid fantasy. "Furthermore," Brenda said, her eyes glinting, "she alleges that you told her, and I quote, 'Maybe you should learn to stay in your lane and leave the numbers to the men.'" I felt a hot flush of anger. That was the most ridiculous, cartoonishly evil thing I could imagine saying. It was a character assassination. "Mr. Henderson," Brenda said, turning to the vice president. "As you know, this company has a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and intimidation. This kind of behavior is unacceptable and creates a toxic environment for our female employees." Mr. Henderson looked at me, his face unreadable. "Alex, do you have anything to say in response to these allegations?" I took a slow, deep breath, trying to calm my pounding heart. This was it, the moment of truth. My career was on the line. "Yes, I do," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I deny every single one of those accusations. They are completely 100% false." I described the meeting exactly as it had happened. I talked about our professional disagreement over the data. I explained that the conversation was tense, but that it remained professional throughout. I stated that I never raised my voice, never stood up in an intimidating way, and I certainly never said that vile, sexist comment. Brenda scoffed, a smug little smile playing on her lips. "I see, so it's your word against hers, is that it, Alex?" She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "And let me be very clear. In situations like this, where a female employee reports feeling intimidated and threatened, this company's policy is to believe the victim." I looked from her smug face to Mr. Henderson's stony expression. This was the moment they were going to fire me. They had already made up their minds. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and loud in the quiet room, "it's not just my word." I reached into my pocket and took out my other phone, the one from the meeting. I placed it gently on the polished surface of Brenda's desk. "I have a full, unedited audio recording of the entire 45-minute meeting," I announced. The reaction was instantaneous. Brenda's smug expression vanished, replaced by a flash of utter disbelief. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. Mr. Henderson, who had been leaning back in his chair, suddenly sat bolt upright. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the phone. This was the explodes part of the story. Brenda's disbelief morphed into pure, incandescent rage. Her face turned a deep shade of crimson. "You did what?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You recorded her without her permission. That is a disgusting violation of privacy. That's illegal. You are fired. You are so fired. I remained calm. I looked directly at Mr. Henderson, ignoring Brenda's tirade. Sir, I said, speaking to him directly, as I'm sure Brenda knows, our state has a one-party consent law. The recording is perfectly legal. I made it because I was concerned that my professional disagreement with Emily might be misconstrued. I did it to protect myself in case a situation exactly like this one arose. Mr. Henderson stared at me for a long moment. Then he looked at Brenda, who was still sputtering, red-faced and furious. Play it, Mr. Henderson said, his voice a low command. Robert, you can't be serious, Brenda protested. This is a violation of company policy. Brenda, Mr. Henderson said, his voice dangerously quiet. Play the recording. I unlocked the phone, found the file labeled Project Phoenix Strategy Meeting, and hit play. The sound of my own voice, calm and measured, filled the silent room. Okay, so if we look at the Q3 engagement metrics here, we all sat there for 45 agonizing minutes, listening to the entire meeting. The recording was a perfect defense. It captured everything. The professional tone, the data-based arguments, my patient explanations. It also captured Emily's growing frustration and her snippy, unprofessional remarks. And most importantly, it proved that I never raised my voice, never stood up, and the phrase, stay in your lane, was never, ever uttered. The accusation was a complete and utter lie from start to finish. When the recording finally ended, the silence in the room was heavier than a block of lead. I looked at Brenda. She was pale now, all the rage drained out of her, replaced by a look of sheer panic. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mr. Henderson had his elbows on the desk, his head in his hands. He looked utterly exhausted. He finally looked up, and his gaze was hard as steel. He looked at me first. Alex, he said, go back to your desk. Do not speak to anyone about this meeting. We will handle it from here. Yes, sir, I said. I stood up, collected my phone, and walked out of the office, not looking back. Walking back through the office felt like a dream. My legs were shaky. My colleagues at their desks were just a blur. My friends in our secret chat group, Mark, David, and Sam, saw me walk past. They saw the look on my face and knew. They knew the bomb had finally gone off. I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod as I passed David's cubicle. I sat down at my desk and stared at my monitor, not really seeing it. My adrenaline was crashing, leaving me feeling hollowed out. About an hour later, I saw Emily being escorted from the building by security, carrying a small cardboard box of her personal belongings. She was crying. Another hour passed. Then an email went out from Mr. Henderson to the entire company. Subject, leadership announcement. The email was brief and corporate. It announced that Brenda was no longer with the company, effective immediately. It wished her well in her future endeavors. The office buzzed with hushed, frantic speculation. No one knew the real story. But the male employees who had been living under Brenda's reign of terror felt a collective sense of relief. It was like the sun had come out after a long, dark storm. Late that afternoon, Mr. Henderson called a meeting. He invited me, Mark, David, Sam, and about 10 other male employees from various departments. We all filed into the main conference room. Mr. Henderson was there, looking older and more tired than I had ever seen him. He closed the door. All right, he said, skipping any pleasantries. I know what's been going on. Alex's situation today brought it all to light. I want to know the truth. I want to know how many of you have been recording your conversations here. There was a tense silence. We all looked at each other. I decided to speak up. I have, sir, I said. Then Mark spoke. Me too. And me, said David. One by one, nearly every man in that room admitted to it. Mr. Henderson didn't look angry. He just looked profoundly sad. He sank into a chair and rubbed his face. My God, he whispered. It's come to this. He looked around at all of us. I am not going to punish any of you, he said, because frankly, we the leadership of this company drove you to it. We allowed a culture of fear and accusation to grow unchecked. We created an environment where you felt so unsafe that you had to resort to secretly recording your colleagues just to protect your careers and your reputations. For that, I am truly sorry. It was the most honest thing I had ever heard a senior executive say. He told us that the company was going to change. He said that Emily had been fired for filing a malicious and false report. He said Brenda had been fired for gross negligence and for fostering a discriminatory and hostile environment. He promised a complete overhaul of the Human Resources Department. He said from now on, all complaints would be investigated thoroughly, impartially, and with a focus on evidence, not just feelings. The changes started almost immediately. They brought in an external consulting firm to rebuild HR from the ground up. The new HR director was a no-nonsense older woman who made it clear that her department's job was to support all employees, not to wage a crusade. A new company-wide policy was introduced. All formal meetings involving disputes or performance reviews could be recorded by any party, provided everyone was notified at the start of the meeting. Transparency became the new rule. The culture of the office started to heal, the tensions slowly dissipated, the walking on eggshells stopped, people started joking with each other again, collaboration improved. The cloud of fear that had been hanging over us for so long finally lifted. The other guys and I quietly deleted our secret chat group. We stopped recording every little interaction. We didn't need to anymore. Our insurance policy had served its purpose. It had been a desperate measure for desperate times, and those times were over. Looking back, it was a crazy, stressful, and terrifying period of my life. I never wanted to be a whistleblower or a revolutionary. I just wanted to do my job without fear of having my life ruined by a false accusation. We didn't do it to hurt anyone, we did it to protect ourselves. And in the end, by protecting the truth, we ended up creating a workplace that was safer and fairer for everyone, men and women alike. It wasn't a victory of men over women. It was a victory of facts over ideology. A victory of evidence over hysteria. And it was a powerful reminder that sometimes the only way to fight a broken system is to create your own.